mission statement is more of foundationally why you exist as an organization. Your story is the benefit that you provide to your customers today, tomorrow, and into the future.
Wayne, I'm super excited to have you join me today for this Growth Marketers podcast.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having
Certainly.
me.
Well, you have a very, very interesting background. You kind of started your career in public space, working in politics, and then now you are an entrepreneur. So can you share with our audience a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. I was very lucky that my undergrad institution had a specific internship with a member of Congress at the time. And I wasn't interested in politics, but it was right at the start of the Great Recession. It was my senior year of college, and I knew I needed a job. And so this was offered to me to go out to DC and to be a public relations intern for this United States senator. And I was like, I don't know anything about this, but sure. And throughout that process, I fell in love with the role. I'm like, this is why I'm going to school for this. This is what I want to do with my life. And so I worked extremely hard. And at the end of that experience, while I was still finishing my degree, they offered me a full-time position with his office. And so I finished my degree. I started working for him, and I worked for him for several years until we lost our re-election campaign, unfortunately. And then I went to work for a real estate trade association in Washington, D.C. after that, where I got to flex kind of both sides of what I loved. I got to use grassroots advocacy work with communications and public relations. And I really expanded my network in a big way during that role. I was able to talk with tens of thousands of individual business owners all over the country about issues that were important to them and kind of gain their trust and everything. And so during that experience, I realized that's when I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to help these people with their marketing work and their communications internally and externally. And it was the right time to do that. And so in 2017, I started Bo Digital.
And obviously, how do you think, obviously you definitely have given you a lot of experience in communication and messaging and all of those things. How did that translate it into helping in the corporate world, companies that may or may not be dealing with very time sensitive topics and things like that, right? Like where you're dealing on the public policies and things like that, you have a lot of things that you have to make sure you use the right terms and verbiage and all of that, which is important in communication and marketing as well. But how did that really translate it in helping other businesses?
Yeah, that experience in particular on the Hill was one that I was definitely younger than most people my age doing that work. So that was number one for me. I was almost 10 years younger than most people in the meetings that we were having of people in the similar role in other Senate offices. So that was really wild. But being able to do that really allowed me to, number one, be extremely nimble and realize that the more I can know about a mass variety of topics at a surface level can open the door for me for a lot of different things to be able to help my customers think about things that they're doing differently. Because a lot of times, especially business owners, small business owners, have blinders on and they're worried about the two or three things that very narrowly they feel like affects their bottom line or that they've traditionally focused on. And being able to see that, like, if we can focus on a much wider swath of information, detail, interest to somebody, whatever that may be, that could be super helpful. So that was one. And then I think being able to be really nimble in the work that we do for marketing was also part of that, because being involved in that very fast-paced nature, I wouldn't say that a lot of marketers for small businesses are necessarily dealing in a really fast-paced way. And this was also, I had the benefit of coming up at the same time that social media was becoming powerful for small businesses and a tool for small businesses. And so that nimble attitude and being able to change and move quickly, and if this isn't working, we'll just get rid of it. We don't need to try it for 6 months, and see if it's working or not. If it's not sticky right now, then let's move on.
Yeah, and I was looking over some of the your profile, right? Profiles on LinkedIn and things like that, and I've noticed you talk a lot about the importance of storytelling and all of those things. Can you elaborate a little bit, especially as a communication company, the importance of storytelling in your marketing and how that, especially in getting your customers to have an emotional connection, or even at least for them to sympathize with a specific cause or something that you're trying to promote.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the emotional connection, because there are lots of people that have stories for their
Hmm.
companies, and that's where I start from. I don't try to assume that people don't have a good story, because most of them
Hmm.
do. I try to talk about it more as you need an efficient and effective
Hmm.
story these days, because it's one thing to, if your story is too long, you're going to lose
Hmm.
people. So that's where it has to be efficient, and then it has to be effective in the way of, it's got to persuade them to do
Hmm.
something. And there are a lot of people that will say, well, we do have a story, we have a mission statement. And that's not the same to me for your business. Your story should evolve and adapt as your business does. Your story in 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, is different than it is today, and is different than it was in
Hmm.
2017. It should grow. Your mission statement is more of foundationally why you exist as an organization. Your story is the benefit that you provide to your customers today, tomorrow, and into the future. And for a lot of people, they don't use the story to connect, like you were saying. They try to use it as just more of a megaphone for their business, or sometimes it's a little bit of a vanity exercise for some people, and they want to use it to only talk about the things that are important to
Hmm.
them. But ultimately, in addition to that, persuading people to do something, and doing it in an effective way, you've also got to try to differentiate what you're doing. Your story has to show, why are you different? Why are you better, faster, stronger than somebody else that maybe is doing something similarly to
Hmm.
you?
Obviously, you gave me a synopsis of your founding story of how this agency came about, right? Bow Agency. But can you give us a little example of what kind of a story you tell to talk about how you're helping customers today?
Yeah. My story is that I've wanted to be a small business owner since I was a kid. I would go to my grandparents' house, my grandma and grandpa Bo, who the company is named after, and I would put a sheet on the couch, and I would take all their belongings from around the house, and I would set it up as a
Mm.
storefront, and I would sell their things back to them. And there's a picture of that on our about us page on our website, even of me doing that as a kid. And so I always knew I wanted to own my own business, but until I was able to hear from business owners when I worked on Capitol Hill and when I worked in DC at this trade association, I wasn't sure that, I didn't realize that I could help other business owners. That whole B2B part of marketing was very different to me. And so I thought, that could be a really cool thing that we were helpful with. And I also, like I said, coming into my own in the marketing space in 2007, where we barely had Facebook and Twitter. People were brand newly signing up for Gmail accounts and things like that. I mean, we were in the baby phase of social, for sure, and figuring out how to use that as an edge and how to use that as an educational tool for our folks was definitely part of our story. I wanted us to be a family business that helped other family businesses without breaking the bank or making it more difficult than it
And
needed to
how
be.
do you incorporate this? Obviously, like when you have an initial conversation with a prospect, when do you kind of bring and weave these stories into sales and marketing efforts?
We try to weave pieces of the story in all the time, and that's why, like every good book that you read, a good story has different chapters to
Hmm.
it. And so if you think about the different chapters of your story as a business, you can figure out when you want to elevate some of those based on what you're doing. And so depending on what prospects we're talking to when it comes to trying to get new business for our company, I might talk more about the family side of what we do, and that my brother helped me design the logo for the company on the very first day, and that my mom was the first one that knew that I had bought the domain name for the company, and she works for us full time today, and that value is really intrinsically important to us. For a different prospect, I may bring up more of the fact that we're able to listen and tell stories better because we've got a good story, and so we're able to listen and tell stories better or more efficiently than other folks. And I give examples of people that have challenged us over the
Hmm.
years and said, I just don't know how you're going to come in and be able to do something better than what we've already got. And then, we've got study after study showing that we've been able to do that in a way that still honors their past while looking better toward the future and things like that. And so I think you pick and choose what makes sense based on what you're trying to accomplish. And that's where like having a fairly comprehensive story that is, like I said before, nimble and everything like that, that's able to be used when you need it, can be really
Do you
helpful.
have a success story of how you helped the company kind of craft their story and how that helped them win more customers?
Yeah, yeah. So there was a company that had been around for many, many years. They started in the late 60s, out on the west part of the country here in the US. And um, we, this woman came up to us. We had done so the way we build a story for our company is we talk to several of their customers in person. We want to talk to them face to face or on the phone. We don't do online surveys and things like that. We really want to hear from them. And then after we talk to customers, we talk to their internal team and we ask very similar questions about why do your customers love you? Why do they keep coming back? What's the real secret to the sauce here? That kind of thing. And then after that, we try to figure out where does that miss and match? Where do your customers think that they love and appreciate you and come back, and why do you think they love you? Because a lot of times it does miss a lot. It misses because the company thinks they come back because of the investments you're making. The company thinks they come back because of technology you've added or security or customer experience tools and things like that. But the customers may say, we come back because you hire nice
Mm.
people or you train them to communicate in such a great way and that sort of thing. And so we had gone through this process with this company who already had a great story that they wanted to feel like a Main Street USA company. They wanted to offer good service to their customers and all of that. But over the years, they had gotten a ton of competition. And so they said, we just don't feel like with a few hours of work, you're going to be able to really see us. And this one woman in particular had come up to me and she, put her finger in my face and basically told me, who do you think you
Mm.
are, essentially. And so a couple of months later, after all that work, and we presented it to them in person at one of their team meetings, and she came up to us with tears in her eyes, and she said, "I don't know how you guys hit the nail on the head, but you really saw us. You saw who we were." And she said, "I've been working here for almost 40 years, and I've never been more empowered and excited to go talk about the work that I
Mm.
do. You have given me a vehicle to talk differently about this company in a way that I haven't felt in
Mm.
decades." And their whole team was able to use that story to broaden their audience and to feel like they were out of this rut of a story that worked before. Again, there was nothing wrong with their previous story, but it wasn't serving them well in today's marketplace. And so they were able to then translate that to a new website presence, a whole new social media strategy, and things like that to really be able to interact with customers and explain their true benefit in a very different
Yeah,
way.
that's a very powerful story. So obviously, you've had a lot of experience in the PR world, having worked in Washington D.C. and then obviously now helping a lot of small businesses across the country. So can you help us understand? And I know there's been a lot of changes happen in the industry over the years, and like you said, early days of Facebook and social media and all of those things. And back in the day, when we talk about press releases and public relationship, there was a completely different perspective on what that meant. And a lot of times people use press release as even a strategy to get organic ranking and all of those things, but that has kind of gone away. So can you tell us the difference between a public relations effort and a press release? And then maybe we can elaborate on that somehow. How do you leverage that even today from a marketing and sales standpoint?
Of course. That's really where my passion lies the most, is in the public relations area, because it really marries a lot of different efforts that you might be doing as an organization. It's part communications, part marketing, part sales, part
Mm-hmm.
relationships, business development, community affairs. I mean, there's so many different hats that can go into it, and I didn't know what it was when I went to college. It's what I should have been majoring in day one. But I thought, the traditional hat people think of is
Mm-hmm.
marketing. And so I put down I was going to be a marketing major, so help me. And I got into that and I was like, this is just not what I want to be doing. This is not my strong suit. And I was very lucky to have a great advisor that pointed me in the direction of public relations. And for most people, public relations is figuring out where what you do internally can intersect with your broader community. The public can be other businesses in your sphere of influence. It can be the community that you work and operate in. It can be the broader public society in general for your whole state, region, country. I mean, it can really grow from there. But it's what are you doing to be an active member of those groups? And there's lots of different ways to accomplish that. And so a press release is a vehicle within your public relations strategy. It shouldn't likely be your only vehicle that you use, but it's one tool that you can use. And people really, I think that sometimes public relations gets misunderstood or gets a bad rap because there are different ways that you can do PR. And even specifically with press releases. So some people will write a press release about a new product, a new acquisition, a new designation that they've gotten as a company, or something like that, and they'll put out a press release on one of these giant press release engines that gets it to go everywhere. And that's what you were saying. You can do that. You can pay to put a press release on what's called the wire, and have it show up everywhere online, and it helps with your search engine optimization and things like that. And that's where, like, if you've seen sometimes where a small business in your area is on Yahoo Finance, for example, or something like that, it is because they pick up their stories from the wire, meaning that a press release goes out very broadly, and then these companies can just very easily put them onto their websites, and they don't have to worry about hiring staff to create stories and content because they're just using your press release and going with it. And that's one great strategy. And I always ask folks, if that's what you want to do, that's great. If you want to have a wire approach where you're trying to get the most eyeballs possible, that's fine. But the real key of a press release is that you're trying to let a member of the media know about either news that you have as an organization that can benefit someone else, or expertise that you have that can benefit that reporter in the future. And so that's where the relation side comes to the PR piece. And so if you're sending out a press release about oh, I don't know, let's say a new product that you're launching, if you send out one press release to one journalist and they don't use it, some people sort of throw their hands up and they're like, oh, well, this failed. This isn't something that's helpful or worthwhile. And you have to think about the relationship side of it. Does that journalist know you? Have you interacted with them before? Have you put in the work to try to show, that they're that you are knowledgeable and that you know what you're doing and that sort of thing? And so press releases can be super powerful and really helpful, but a lot of people just don't use them correctly right
Yeah.
now.
So what you're talking about is doing it through the wire. You publish it, but it doesn't stop there. But you take it and now try to go reach out to an actual journalist and say, hey, we did this press release talking about this new product or this new offering, and would you tell this to your audience and turn it into some sort of a whether it be an opportunity to interview somebody in the company to talk about that, or kind of weave that into some of the pieces they may be working on.
Exactly. And I think that, like a lot of people use press releases for news, and they think that, well, we can only issue a press release if we have news. And that's not necessarily the case. You can issue a press release, again, to show your expertise. So, for example, yesterday, they announced jobs numbers for last month for the United States. And it was a really big month for job growth, and people were excited about it. Depending on what industry you're in, like, let's say a lot of our customers are in real estate. We have some of our customers that today put out a statement on a press release that just said, here's how the strong job numbers are likely to affect real estate. And so you're giving them one or two lines that maybe they can use in a story that they're doing about the job numbers with a perspective that they hadn't thought of. They're thinking about job numbers and immediately talk about unemployment rates or maybe specific businesses that are hiring or firing in their area, they're not thinking about how, oh, this domino can affect a lot of other things. And so putting out a press release with a 3 sentence statement of, look, we know more about real estate than most other companies in our
Mm-hmm.
area, and these numbers mean that, next month people are more likely to look for new homes because they're going to have jobs to be able to afford it, or who
Mm-hmm.
knows, what they might say there. But using that as an opportunity rather than waiting for news to break can be a really powerful way to lean on PR
So
practices.
obviously, from what you just described about doing the press releases, that leads to having an opportunity to have a conversation started with another journalist to hopefully get some sort of a brand mention or interview or getting quoted. And then that usually what people, when they say, is earned media. So can you elaborate a little bit about how earned media plays a part and how can you kind of accelerate the earned media earning potential?
Yeah, the earned media is um, really crucial, and typically can be one of the most fruitful things that you get in terms of your media approach. And the a lot of them stumble when they first try to get earned media, like I was saying. And so if you do something like this press release strategy for sending out a statement on jobs numbers or who knows what, um, you have to continually reaching out to those folks. So if a reporter ends up using that statement, you should be sending them a thank you note and thanking them for including you and reminding them that you're happy to talk in the future. It's a way to then use their a story that they use as an example with another reporter in the future for something else that can be helpful to you, so that you can continue to amplify and build those relationships on what you're doing there. But then you also have to, it's not enough to get the earned media. You have to then turn it into shared media for your organization. You need to make sure that you're pushing it out, number one, to help get more eyeballs on it for that, that publication or TV station or who knows what they might be. But you've got to then share it because you want it to have as much growth and spread as possible. So making sure that you can figure out how to link it on your website, how to include it in your marketing emails, highlighting it on social media and stories and reels, using it in future video that you do, all of that kind of stuff to be able to amplify it even further, so that then you actually get, like you were talking about, turning someone into a customer, trying to get someone to do something because you've gotten this media.
Yeah. So then how is this different from, like, let's say digital PR, right? So because I know that's also a term that's probably in the last 5, 7 years became pretty popular. And there's a lot of people that talk about it in the digital marketing space. So if there's press releases and then you get these earned media by having a journalist or someone actually talking about you, and then you turn that into a shared media by promoting that on your own social platforms and your own media, and then ultimately there's that concept of like a digital PR. So what exactly is that, and how do you actually get more of it?
Digital PR has a lot of different meanings, but for most folks, it encompasses what you're doing with your search engine optimization to try to grow your digital footprint, combined with your earned media and your owned
Mm-hmm.
media, the media that you're pushing out from your own organization. And so there are a lot of different schools of thought on digital PR and things like that. But I think that if you're creating a good enough uh, flywheel almost for trying to get people's attention in what you're doing. And if you're getting earned media and you're sharing in what you're doing on your digital platforms in a variety of ways, not just like, uh, immediately putting that story out there in the same way on each one, but figuring out how to recycle that content. That's where you're going to see the most bang for your buck. I think that people that focus on digital PR specifically have to think through these days, are you going to have, do you have an influencer strategy? That's a big one for a lot of folks. And, a lot of influencers can get paid for 1,000 followers or more. So when you're thinking about the digital side of things, are you going to pay for some of the approach that you're taking to the digital PR side of things? How far are you looking to go? And for, every small business is different, and especially if you're somebody that's more of a B2B operation. Sometimes your operation is even smaller in terms of the audience that you're trying to go after. And so that may not be something that's important to you. And so I always just give people a little bit of caution if you're hiring someone or a group to specifically look at digital PR, to just be very specific in what you're looking for. What does success look like? What are your goals looking like? Because for a lot of that, it doesn't take a long time to see if it's working or not. It's sort of like fishing, you know, if the bobber moves, you stay put, and if not, then you'll move along. And so there's some people that get tricked into thinking that digital PR is a crazy long-term investment and a crazy high investment, and it doesn't have to be necessarily in the B2B space.
So obviously, then I see you are kind of saying digital PR is that all of these things kind of combine together, almost like somewhat of a public relationship effort in the digital
Mm-hmm.
sphere. But what about like when you're actually contributing content to a specific publication, whether that be like an industry journal or like a magazine or something in your field?
Yeah, for that's a harder one for a lot of organizations to do because they don't feel like they create content very
Hmm.
well. And so it's important to find a partner that can help you create content if you don't feel like you do that well internally, or somebody in your family, an intern, a local English writer at a university or something like that. But finding those opportunities uh, to do that for some of these other groups can be hugely powerful too, because anybody that has, whether it's an electronic newsletter, an e-magazine, who knows what, you can be using that as part of your digital PR efforts. But a lot of people get scared of it because they're not sure. They're like, well, it was hard enough to write a press release or to write a statement. I don't know how to write an article or a guest column or an opinion editorial or something like that for some of these groups. But a lot of them are super hungry for content, and so they're more than willing to talk with you about what's what are they most interested in and how can you fulfill a need for them. You just have to then be able to deliver it to them. And so you can use folks from Upwork, even, a third party contractor or something like that, but you've got to be able to provide what they would view as successful for that to work.
Yeah, and I also noticed on your bio you had a lot of recognitions and awards and things like that, right? You were named one of the best places to work in Indiana. You had exemplary leadership award, and you have the marketing leader award in 2023. So that's another strategy in terms of getting recognition in the marketplace. So how do you even find such
Mhm.
opportunities? And then also, how do what sort of energy and effort needs to be put into some of those things to even get those?
We've added to our mix for sure, and that we encourage our customers to do, because it can create news opportunities for you to be able to talk about other things, so that you can pair. For example, you brought up the best places to work. We are excited that we've been named for a third year in a row as a best place to work in Indiana, and we're waiting to share that news next month when it officially gets announced, with a new service offering that we're doing as a company, and we're going to combine that as we thrive internally, we're thriving externally for our customers and that kind of thing. And so you can use those opportunities, and you have to look out for them. Not, your whatever industry you serve usually has a trade association that serves your industry. There are trade publications that are serving your industry, and those are usually the ones that are helping with some of these awards. Your local chambers of commerce, your economic development alliances, all of them usually have certain recognition programs and things like that. And you want to keep your ear to the ground for those opportunities. Some of them are 100% merit based, some of them are 100% pay to play, most of them are somewhere right in the middle. So you also want to look at the previous reviews and how seriously do people take this stuff, because once you do one or two of them, you're going to get emails for lots more, and most of them are going to be sort of scam worthy. They just want your check, and then they're happy to send you a 20-cent trophy. And you do want it to mean something. You don't want to just do some of these programs to get the accolades. You want it to mean something, so that it's got more weight when you use it in your other marketing and PR practices. But I would start locally first, and within the different groups that serve your industry, to find some of those. But then more broadly, even like SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, they have a lot of different awards and groups that give awards for businesses and the way that they run their business on their website that you can look at too, to start to figure out what makes sense for you and what's going to work for your
Yeah, and
organization.
that was kind of what one of my follow-up questions, like you said, is the pay to play. Sometimes you kind of wonder like how much of this is actually legitimate awards that you earned, right, versus something that you could just buy from some website. So my question, obviously, as we wrap up here, is obviously you mentioned just in the part of PR, right, just in public relationship alone, all the things you could do as a business to create awareness, get recognition, establish credibility, and hopefully earn some customers. And then there's a lot more in the world of marketing that you can be doing, right? You have blogging and podcast and videos, and obviously you're here on a podcast as a guest. And then there's webinars and speak at events. I mean, there you go, right? Like you can exhibit at a trade show. All of those are efforts that you can do. So how do you prioritize all of these? And if you were to, as a business leader, trying to figure out how do I budget for all of these things, in what category would you put these things and in what order? Because obviously, like some of these things on the PR side, like there's no immediate ROI, right? Just because you got
Right.
recognition doesn't necessarily translate into business. Just because somebody quoted you in a journal doesn't necessarily mean that you made some customers out of it. So how do you really justify investment and also prioritize efforts towards some of these things?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think that that is a struggle for a lot of people to figure out where does that importance lie. And I think that first you have to decide as an organization, what does success look like at the end of the day, if you put even $1 of budget toward this, what do you want to say you've accomplished? And we work with some organizations who have said, like, we want the notoriety, we want to be known as, we are constantly getting recognized for our work, and we don't care what that looks like. We want to be able to put out a press release every month saying that we won something or we're recognized by something or put on a list or whatever. And then that's your strategy then. If that's what success is to you, then your strategy is that you're identifying awards and lists and other milestones, acknowledgments, achievements that you can apply for, and you don't care whether it's pay to play and all of that. And then that kind of sets the map for you. Um, for others, if it's, I think most small businesses when they're starting out, it's revenue. Like you said, if it's a one-off press release that you pay someone 500 to $1,000 to write and distribute and try to get placed for you, you're like, well, I need to make $1,000 off of that, and I might not right away for my very first one. And so then you have to think about, well, then what's most effective in terms of what you're doing. And for us, what we see most effective in general for our customers is consistent communication that is helpful to your customers. Especially, I know so many of your audience is B2B, and for us especially, it is sharing information that's not salesy in a very consistent way that helps more broadly their business. So, not constantly saying, use our product, or here are the 3 ways our product's better, or did you know we just enhanced our product in this way, or service, or whatever. But rather, hey, if you're in the healthcare space, did you hear about these 3 apps recently that can really help healthcare professionals? Or did you know that this new data was released on whatever for healthcare folks? Whatever that is, being more of a resource to them and being super consistent in what you're doing, whether that's email marketing or social media or whatever, putting forward the budget and the resources to be consistent in that way first, and flexing that muscle is probably your number one priority. Because then once you've got that going, it's kind of like when you're a kid and you make the whirlpool happen, as you just keep walking around the pool until it finally starts to circulate. That's kind of what you're doing. You've got that resistance and it's hard to get it going, but once you've got the water moving in the right direction, you can keep throwing stuff in there and it's going to just go faster and faster for you. And so if you're able to get the consistency and the communication going nonstop, then you can much more easily add press releases, digital PR, SEO, awards and milestones, all that, podcast appearances, all that kind of stuff into the mix, and you see it start to take hold because people are already paying attention. You've already gotten them used to hearing from you. It's not piecemealed, one-off kind of stuff. And that's where sometimes if you don't know where to start, and if you're not used to consistent messaging, doing some of that stuff all one-off, like, oh well, we tried for this award and we put out this one statement and we did a press release about our community service day last month, and none of it's working, like none of it's doing anything. And it's because all of them you're sort of throwing into the pool and it's bouncing right back out. You've got to make sure that things are going smoothly first before you can add the rest.
Yeah, I think that's a big takeaway, because a lot of times I think that's the biggest mistake business leaders make, because they exhibited at one show and that was a flap and they're like, oh, the trade shows suck, we're never going to do it. And we also see it on the other extreme where, you know, they would try Google ads for like 3 months and they couldn't, while just starting to refine the keywords, starting to get some momentum and starting to see some performance. And then they're like, well, we gave it enough time, it didn't work, so this doesn't really work in our industry. Or they've tried it like Facebook ads 3 years ago or 5 years ago, it didn't work. Now when you bring it back up again, like, oh, that's just not going to work for us. I think, like you said, there's a lot of these things have to be working all at the same time, and you need to give it enough time. And it's all, I think there's that, I don't remember the exact stat, but there's like 13 or 15 touches it takes on an average before somebody can have a brand recollection. So if they start seeing your name mentioned in so many places, they've seen your brand and logo and content and videos and your podcast and everything else, just gradually that has an impact in people's mind. And then they're like, well, this is a credible company. I've seen them around. They've been around a while, right? Like I can now trust them to probably take care of my whatever my problem. I think that's very much a big lesson to be learned, and obviously that's some advice that our listeners can put into practice. So tell our audience a little bit where they can find out more about you and how they might be able to get some more resources from you.
Sure. You can learn more about Bow Digital at bowdigital.com. That's BOWE digital.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn with wayne.m.stanley or on Instagram with Wayne Stanley. And I brainstorm with folks all the time and try to think differently with business leaders every single day. And so I'm always happy to do that. Even if you're never going to turn into a customer with us, it's still fun to think about what are your challenges and opportunities right now, and how can we help you think a little differently there.
Sounds like a plan. Well, Wayne, I certainly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.